The war in the Orion expanse had stretched for decades, leaving countless worlds scarred and countless species broken. Every star system seemed to carry the echoes of old battles, the silent remains of fleets that had vanished into the void, and the whispers of soldiers who had fought until they had nothing left to give. Humans were still relatively young compared to the civilizations they faced, but they had something every alien race underestimated: a relentless spirit, a creativity born from survival, and a stubborn refusal to give up no matter how impossible the odds. The Krasar system had become one of the flashpoints of this ongoing war. It was a cluster of mining colonies orbiting a dim, orange sun, barely significant in the galactic maps except for its valuable resources. That insignificance had made it an ideal target for the Zelari, a species that thrived on overwhelming force, hive-like coordination, and fear. The Zelari viewed humans as unpredictable, but they had never faced an entire battalion of them at full strength. The local garrison, composed of a few thousand Terran soldiers, had been caught off guard by the sudden Zelari assault. Drones, hundreds of them, swarmed the colony like living shadows, firing plasma rounds that tore through walls and armor alike. The humans had fought bravely, but as their communications officer transmitted the desperate message for reinforcements, the situation looked grim. "We can't hold them alone," the officer said, his voice tight, almost trembling. "We need help. We need anything you can send." Back on Earth, the Supreme Command of the Defense Fleet received the call. Admiral Vera, one of humanity's most experienced commanders, leaned over the table in the strategy room. The holographic display above her showed the positions of the garrison, the incoming Zelari forces, and the orbital hazards surrounding the planet. Her face was hard, calm, but her eyes held a spark that betrayed her thoughts. "A squad isn't enough," she said quietly, though her words carried across the room. "They need more. They need humanity itself." Within hours, the decision had been made. Transport ships carrying a full human battalion were dispatched from Earth's primary staging area. The soldiers aboard were a mix of infantry, engineers, tacticians, and medics, all trained not just to fight, but to adapt. They carried no alien technology, no superhuman enhancements. Their weapons were conventional, but their minds were sharpened by experience, improvisation, and a refusal to let fear control them. As the fleet approached Krasar, the human soldiers prepared themselves for the battle to come. Sergeant Kellen Myra, a veteran of countless skirmishes, paced the transport's loading bay. Her eyes flicked across the faces of the soldiers, some young and eager, others hardened by years of fighting, all sharing the same determined expression. "Remember," she said, her voice carrying authority without harshness, "we're not just going in to fight. We're going to show them why humanity is never to be underestimated. Watch your comrades, trust your instincts, and remember that nothing is stronger than our will." The ships entered orbit above the besieged colony. From her vantage point on the bridge, Kellen observed the devastation below. Buildings that had once housed thousands of civilians were reduced to skeletal frames. Streets were littered with debris and burning vehicles, and the flickering lights of destroyed drones painted the city in an eerie glow. The Zelari forces moved with precision, overwhelming numbers and coordination that made them seem almost unstoppable. Yet, Kellen did not flinch. She had faced impossible odds before, and she knew her soldiers were ready. The first wave of humans descended into the city via drop pods and shuttlecraft, landing in strategic locations to maximize their impact. They moved fast, almost fluidly, setting up barricades, booby traps, and sniper positions as they went. Civilians who had managed to survive the initial assault emerged from hiding, their eyes wide with hope and disbelief. For the first time in weeks, they saw help arriving not as a distant hope, but as a tangible living force. The human strategy was not one of blind aggression. They studied the Zelari patterns, identified weaknesses, and exploited them with precision. One squad rigged a crumbling factory to collapse onto an advancing column of drones, while another team used smoke and mirrors to create the illusion of a much larger force moving through the streets. Every action was calculated, but there was also an element of chaos that the Zelari could not predict. Humans thrived in chaos. They adapted, improvised, and turned what looked like desperate situations into opportunities for victory. Kellen led a squad through a narrow alleyway, her pulse steady despite the tension. Around her, the sounds of battle filled the air, explosions, the hum of plasma rounds, and the occasional scream of a Zelari drone being destroyed. Her team moved with silent efficiency, checking corners, covering each other, and communicating in subtle signals that kept them coordinated without revealing their positions to the enemy. "Contact," whispered one of her soldiers, pointing to a patrol of drones moving toward their position. Kellen's eyes scanned the area. There was a loose structure nearby, partially collapsed but still standing. She gestured. "Trap it." On my mark. Within moments, the humans had set charges, creating a network of traps that turned the patrol into an easy target. When the drones advanced, they walked straight into the kill zone, their destruction precise and silent. As the day progressed, it became clear that the humans were changing the battle. The Zelari had assumed the colony would fall quickly, that fear would sap the defenders' will, and that no reinforcements could match their numbers. Yet here was a force that refused to yield, moving with intelligence, bravery, and coordination that seemed almost superhuman because it was so unexpected. From a vantage point atop a ruined tower, Kellen observed the city. Smoke rose in thick plumes, flames licked the edges of shattered buildings, and alien drones fell in increasing numbers. Civilians were being guided to safety by engineers and medics who moved through the chaos with calm determination. Every human action created ripples of effect. Drones destroyed, patrols misled, enemy communications disrupted. It was a battle not just of strength, but of ingenuity, and the humans excelled at both. By evening, the humans had established strong positions in key areas of the city. They had turned narrow streets into defensive corridors, fortified buildings into strongholds, and created ambush points that made every Zelari advance costly. Reports from the front lines indicated that the aliens were confused, frustrated, and beginning to fear the human unpredictability. Their numbers, once overwhelming, were being diminished not just by firepower, but by the humans' ability to think, adapt, and use the environment to their advantage. Kellen felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. She had seen battles go badly despite careful planning, but here, she watched human determination shaping the outcome. Soldiers laughed in the face of danger, civilians helped where they could, and every corner of the city was becoming a theater where human creativity and courage took center stage. It was not the most elegant war, not the most precise, but it was effective. It was human. As night fell over Krasar, the city glowed with the combined light of fires and explosions. The humans moved through the darkness like shadows, striking swiftly and disappearing before the Zelari could respond. From the highest tower, Kellen watched the enemy lines falter. It was not complete victory, not yet, but the tide was shifting. For the first time, the aliens were realizing that humans were not a foe to be counted or dismissed. They were a force to be feared. Kellen turned to her second-in-command. "They asked for reinforcements," she said, her voice low but firm. "They got an entire human battalion, and we're just getting started." Her team moved out, disappearing into the labyrinth of ruined streets, ready to continue the fight. Behind them, the city seemed to pulse with energy, a testament to human resilience, ingenuity, and courage. The Zelari might have thought this battle would be easy. They were wrong. Every human soldier was a storm, unpredictable and unstoppable, and the Krasar system was about to witness the full force of what humanity could do when pushed to its limits. As the night deepened, the stars above the city seemed to shine brighter, reflecting the fire and determination below. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would remember that arrival not as a whisper, but as a roar. Kellen looked down at the streets, listening to the sounds of battle, the shouts of her soldiers, and the whirring of falling drones. She allowed herself a brief smile, a flicker of satisfaction amid the chaos. This was what humans did best: adapt, fight, survive, and inspire hope where none seemed possible. The Zelari would not understand the lesson yet. They never did. But when the smoke cleared and the survivors told their stories, the galaxy would learn that humans were not to be underestimated. They could face overwhelming odds, improvise when everything seemed lost, and find victory where defeat seemed inevitable. And in the Krasar system, on that scorched, battered world, the humans had already begun to prove it. The first night had been a whirlwind. Fires burned through the streets of the Krasar colonies, smoke curling into the dark sky, and the hum of alien drones had filled the air like a constant warning. But by dawn, The humans had transformed the city into a defensive network no Zelari force could easily breach. Every building was fortified, every street corner a potential ambush, every rooftop a sniper's nest. The aliens were clever, but humans had something no one could predict: creativity born of desperation and courage tempered by experience. Sergeant Kellen Myra moved through the city at first light, her boots crunching over rubble, her eyes scanning for movement. The Zelari drones had begun to regroup, their once unbroken lines now fragmented and hesitant. Reports from human squads indicated that the aliens were cautious, almost afraid, which in itself was a victory. The humans were not simply fighting back, they were reshaping the battlefield. "Reports from Sector 4, said Corporal Isaac Wren, adjusting the wrist comms as they walked. "Zelari attempting to flank our eastern positions. They've lost about 20% of their forces overnight. Casualties are higher than expected." Kellen nodded. "Good. That's the result of human ingenuity. Keep tracking their movement. We need to know where they'll try next." She paused at the top of a collapsed plaza and looked down at the streets below. Civilians were emerging cautiously from hiding places, following medics and engineers who had turned the ruins into a makeshift safe zone. Children clung to their parents, their wide eyes watching the soldiers who had come to save them. In a few days, these humans had done something no one had thought possible. They had not only held the city, they had inspired hope. The Zelari, sensing this change, began sending larger formations into the streets. They were slower now, more methodical, trying to avoid traps that had already cost them dearly. But humans had anticipated this. Engineers had rigged entire blocks of buildings with controlled demolitions. Every alley had multiple layers of defense, from mines to barricades to hidden shooters. Humans didn't rely on numbers or technology alone. They relied on thinking, adapting, and turning the environment to their advantage. Kellen led her squad toward one of the eastern approaches. She crouched behind a partially collapsed wall, her hands signaling silence. Through the dust and morning light, she could see the alien ranks advancing. Their metallic bodies shimmered in the weak sunlight, and their movements were coordinated with mechanical precision. But they moved into the trap like pawns. At her command, engineers detonated charges in the nearby buildings, sending concrete and metal raining down onto the first ranks of the aliens. Humans followed swiftly, picking off drones that survived the collapse. The Zelari faltered, confused by the sudden chaos. Across the city, the battalion worked in perfect, chaotic harmony. Snipers covered intersections, squads created false retreats to lure the aliens into ambushes, and engineers continued setting traps while medics ensured the wounded could return to the fight. Every action was calculated, but it had the unpredictable energy of humans improvising in real time. "Move! Over here!" Kellen shouted as a group of Zelari tried to flank them from a side street. Her squad darted through the rubble, engaging the aliens in close combat. Humans were not naturally stronger or faster than the Zelari, but they fought smarter. They used cover, coordinated attacks, and even the city itself as a weapon. They toppled walls onto alien ranks, rolled flaming barrels into advancing lines, and fired improvised grenades from high angles. Every alien destroyed was a testament to the humans' refusal to be predictable. As the battle wore on, Kellen noticed a pattern emerging. The Zelari were beginning to learn from their mistakes, but humans were already changing tactics again. Every attack by the aliens was met with a counter that no algorithm or instinct could predict. Humans were not just fighting, they were evolving on the battlefield. Midday arrived with the sun burning low over the city. Fires raged still, smoke creating a haze that made targeting difficult for the aliens. Kellen and her squad paused atop a large building to survey the fight below. Drones moved in fractured formations, attempting to regroup and coordinate, but the humans' control over the battlefield was becoming apparent. Small squads of soldiers ran between buildings, distracting, misdirecting, and then attacking with deadly precision. From her position, Kellen watched a human medic drag a wounded civilian across open ground. She expected panic, but instead, the medic moved with confidence, firing at any alien who tried to intervene. The civilian's eyes were wide, but there was trust in them. This was more than a battle, it was a statement. Humans were showing that even in the face of overwhelming odds, they would protect what mattered, no matter the risk. Elsewhere, Corporal Wren reported a strange development. Sir, Zelari command units are moving toward the northern district. They seem to be coordinating something unusual. Kellen narrowed her eyes. The Zelari had never been hesitant before, never uncertain. Keep eyes on them, she ordered. Whatever they're planning, we'll adapt. By late afternoon, the humans had secured most of the city's key points. Every drone destroyed and every building fortified shifted the momentum further in humanity's favor. Yet, the battle was far from over. The Zelari, frustrated and desperate, began deploying their heaviest units. Towering machines bristling with weapons and reinforced armor moved into the streets, their approach shaking the ground and forcing humans to rethink their strategy. Kellen met with her squad leaders. "They've brought in the heavy units," she said. "We expected this. We fight smarter, not just harder. Engineers set up reinforced choke points. Infantry prepare to harass them, slow them down. Snipers focus on control nodes and support systems. Medics be ready." This will get messy. As the human squads moved into position, Kellen felt the familiar rush of anticipation. Chaos was never something to fear, it was something to master, and humans had a unique ability to turn chaos into opportunity. As the first massive Zelari unit rolled into the street, it triggered a chain reaction the aliens did not expect. Explosions rocked the nearby buildings as engineers detonated preset charges, collapsing parts of the street directly in front of the heavy unit. It stumbled, slowed by rubble and falling debris. Humans were already there, firing from multiple angles. Grenades, coordinated rifle fire, and improvised weapons struck simultaneously, overwhelming the alien defenses. The heavy unit toppled, sending a wave of smaller drones scattering in all directions. It was not a flawless victory, but it was a clear demonstration of human ingenuity. The Zelari command units adapted quickly, sending additional reinforcements and attempting to reorganize. But the humans had already anticipated this. Squads moved into flank, snipers picked off command nodes, and engineers rigged secondary explosions to disrupt further movement. Each action was methodical, yet executed with the speed and creativity only humans could achieve. By evening, the city's streets were littered with debris and the bodies of fallen drones. Fires burned bright, casting shadows over the victorious human squads. Civilians who had survived came forward cautiously, their eyes wide with awe and gratitude. They had witnessed something extraordinary. Humans who refused to be defeated, who fought not only to survive but to protect, to inspire, and to overcome. Kellen looked over the battlefield from her vantage point atop a partially collapsed building. Her squad gathered around her, exhausted but alive. She allowed herself a brief smile. "The tide is turning," she said softly. "They came to crush us, and they've found the opposite. They're learning what happens when humans fight together when we refuse to back down. They're learning why we survive when others would fall." As night fell, the humans prepared for the next wave of Zelari. The aliens were not defeated, but they were cautious, hesitant in ways that made them vulnerable. Kellen reviewed the plans with her squad leaders, making adjustments for traps, ambushes, and human improvisation. They were ready for anything, because humanity did not rely on predictability. They relied on courage, creativity, and the unshakable will to fight. Throughout the city, the humans moved as one force, each individual contributing to a greater whole. Civilians helped where they could, medics treated the wounded, and engineers prepared the next set of traps. Every corner of the city had been turned into a theater of human ingenuity and adaptability. The Zelari might have thought they understood war, but they were about to learn a lesson they would not forget. Kellen allowed herself a moment to reflect. Humans had arrived as reinforcements, but they had become more than that. They were a storm, unpredictable and relentless, a force that reshaped the battlefield with every action. Their victories were not just tactical, they were symbolic. The galaxy had underestimated humanity for centuries, and now, in the Krasar system, that mistake was becoming painfully clear. As she looked toward the horizon, the fires of the city casting an orange glow into the night sky, Kellen whispered to herself, "They asked for reinforcements. They got more than they imagined. They got humanity in full force." And with that, the battalion moved out once more, ready to continue the fight, knowing that each battle, each victory, and each act of courage was a testament to what humans could accomplish when pushed to the edge. The Zelari would learn quickly, but by then it might already be too late. Humanity had arrived, and it would not be stopped. The dawn brought with it a tense calm. The fires of the previous day still smoldered in the ruins of the city, but the humans had fortified their positions even further. Each building that remained standing had become a stronghold. Every street corner was watched by a sniper or a scout, and every alley was ready to serve as a trap for the Zelari. The aliens had expected a quick victory, a suppression of human resistance, but instead they faced a battalion that not only survived but adapted at every turn. Sergeant Kellen Myra surveyed the city from the roof of a shattered government building. Her squad huddled around her, tired but alert. The Zelari were regrouping, forming new formations in the streets below. Drones hovered cautiously, probing the human defenses, but they were careful now. Every movement was calculated, tentative. They had learned in the past 24 hours that humans did not fight like any other species they had encountered. Corporal Wren, standing beside Kellen, pointed toward the eastern district. "Command units are moving again. Looks like they're trying a coordinated strike." Kellen nodded. "Then we give them one, but it won't be the strike they expect." The humans had learned a key lesson from the first battle. The Zelari were powerful but predictable in their arrogance. Every alien had strength and technology, but humans had imagination, cunning, and the willingness to take risks no one else would. The battalion began to move with precision, setting up traps ahead of the advancing aliens while also preparing their own offensive maneuvers. Squads moved silently through the ruined streets, communicating with hand signals and wrist comms. Explosive charges were placed on critical structures, creating choke points and ambush zones. Engineers had crafted improvised flamethrowers and smoke grenades from the rubble. Snipers took positions on every high vantage point, their scopes trained on key nodes where the Zelari command signals originated. Kellen led her squad toward a narrow street that had become a funnel for incoming drones. She crouched behind a toppled wall and signaled to her soldiers. "Wait for it. On my mark, we strike hard and fast. Don't hold back." The first Zelari drones appeared, cautiously entering the street. Humans struck simultaneously from multiple angles. Explosives detonated, concrete collapsed, and fire swept across the street. The drones were caught off guard. Despite their superior numbers and technology, they faltered in the face of coordinated human creativity. Squad members darted in and out of cover, taking precise shots at vulnerable points, using the environment itself as a weapon. Elsewhere, medics moved quickly through the chaos, carrying wounded civilians and soldiers alike to safer areas. The humans' organization and efficiency contrasted sharply with the aliens' rigidity. Where the Zelari relied on sheer numbers and mechanical precision, humans relied on adaptability and ingenuity. Each victory, no matter how small, reinforced the morale of the battalion and inspired civilians to trust that they would survive. By mid-morning, the Zelari realized that their approach would not succeed through frontal assault. They changed tactics, sending smaller, faster units to flank human positions. But Kellen had anticipated this. Her squads were already in place, covering potential routes and using decoys to mislead the aliens. A column of Zelari stumbled into an ambush near the central plaza, where explosions and concentrated rifle fire decimated their ranks. The survivors fled in disarray, their confidence shaken. The humans seized the moment. Teams moved through the streets, reclaiming lost territory block by block. They salvaged alien weaponry and used it against the remaining forces, adapting to the enemy's technology faster than the Zelari could adjust. Civilians cheered quietly from hidden positions as human soldiers cleared their neighborhoods, providing both safety and hope in equal measure. By afternoon, the battalion had secured several critical districts. They controlled the main thoroughfares and had turned many of the city's ruins into fortified positions. The Zelari were on the defensive for the first time, their command units struggling to regain control. Kellen and her squad used the lull to regroup, tending to the wounded and preparing for the next wave. "Command units are pulling back," reported Wren. "They're trying to consolidate in the northern industrial zone." Kellen clenched her jaw. "Good, that zone is perfect for us." Engineers prepare demolitions along the key streets. Infantry take positions for a controlled advance. Snipers cover the choke points. We'll force them into our hands and finish what we started. The human battalion advanced carefully. They moved like a single organism, each part functioning independently yet in perfect coordination. The streets were a maze, and the humans had transformed that maze into a weapon. Drones that tried to navigate the city were picked off by snipers, trapped by explosives, or funneled into kill zones. Every corner held a potential threat for the aliens, but also a human opportunity. As they approached the northern industrial zone, the Zelari command units attempted to counterattack. Massive armored drones moved into the streets, firing plasma beams and shaking the ground with every step. But humans were ready. Explosives detonated under their feet, rooftops collapsed onto them, and concentrated fire targeted weak points in their armor. Even the largest and most formidable units were forced to retreat or face destruction. Kellen led a team into the heart of the industrial district. Smoke and debris filled the air, but human determination cut through the chaos. They moved swiftly, using the environment to their advantage. Narrow corridors forced the Zelari into close combat, where humans excelled at ambush and improvisation. Engineers set traps in machinery and pipelines, turning the industrial complex itself into a weapon. The battle became a symphony of chaos and precision. Explosions, gunfire, and alien shrieks echoed through the zone, but humans moved with a clarity of purpose. Every soldier understood their role, but they were also free to act on intuition. When one team triggered a trap, another exploited the chaos to strike at command units. When civilians were in danger, medics and soldiers moved without hesitation, prioritizing life alongside victory. By evening, the northern industrial zone had fallen completely into human hands. The Zelari were retreating in disorder, their losses mounting rapidly. Kellen and her squad moved through the aftermath, checking for survivors and securing positions for the night. Civilians cautiously came forward, grateful for the humans who had not only fought for survival, but had also fought to protect them. Kellen allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. They had not only survived another day, they had taken the fight to the enemy. Humans had shown that courage, creativity, and teamwork could overcome even the most technologically advanced adversaries. The Zelari, for all their strength, were struggling to adapt to the unpredictable, relentless human approach. "Tomorrow," Kellen said to Ren quietly, "we push them out completely. We finish what we started." Ren nodded. "They'll never forget today." Kellen looked toward the horizon, where the last remnants of the alien forces were retreating. The city, though battered, was alive with human activity. Civilians were being assisted, buildings reinforced, and the battalion prepared for the next stage of battle. Every street, every corner, every ruined building had been transformed by human ingenuity and determination. Night fell, bringing with it an uneasy calm. Fires still burned, and the sound of distant drone engines echoed from beyond the city limits. But the humans held the high ground, both physically and morally. They had not only survived, they had shown what it meant to be human in the face of impossible odds. Kellen stood atop a building, her gaze sweeping over the city. "They came to crush us," she whispered, "but we are the storm they never expected. Every human here is proof that we fight, we adapt, and we survive. And soon they'll learn that there's nothing more dangerous than an entire human battalion that refuses to lose." As the night deepened, the human soldiers patrolled the streets, ready for any counterattack. Engineers repaired barricades, medics treated the injured, and infantry moved silently through shadows. Every action reinforced the human presence. Every decision shaped the battlefield further in their favor. The Zelari had underestimated humanity once more, and that mistake was proving fatal. Each battle, each engagement, and each clever maneuver reinforced the humans' dominance in the Krasar system. The aliens had assumed they could suppress the colonists quickly, but they were discovering that humans were not just survivors. They were warriors capable of turning despair into victory. Kellen allowed herself a brief smile as she surveyed the horizon. Fires, smoke, and rubble painted a picture of destruction, but it was also a testament to human resilience and adaptability. The battalion had transformed a doomed colony into a symbol of resistance. The Zelari might regroup, they might attempt another assault, but humans had already claimed the city as their own. As the night deepened, the sounds of battle faded into distant echoes. Soldiers rested briefly, civilians were secured, and the battalion prepared for the next day. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, more threats, and more opportunities to demonstrate why humanity could never be underestimated. Kellen turned to her squad and spoke quietly, but with authority. "We fight not because it is easy, but because it is necessary. We fight not because we have no fear, but because we refuse to let it control us. We fight because we are human. And tomorrow, the Zelari will learn that lesson again, and again, until they understand that they cannot win against what we can do when we stand together." The humans moved into their positions for the night, vigilant and ready. Fires burned, shadows shifted, and the stars above the Krasar system shone down on a city now firmly in human hands. Humanity had turned the tide, but the war was not yet over. Still, for the first time, the Zelari were the ones on the defensive. And in the quiet of the night, Sergeant Kellen Myra allowed herself a thought she rarely voiced aloud. Humanity would not only survive this war, they would dominate it. And as the first light of the new day crept across the horizon, the human battalion prepared to strike again, to push the Zelari further back, and to ensure that every enemy who had ever doubted them would remember the lesson forever. When humans fight together, they are unstoppable. The city was quiet before dawn, but the silence was thick with anticipation. Every building, every street, and every corner held a human soldier prepared for the final confrontation. The Zelari had not disappeared. They were massing in the northern wastelands outside the city, attempting to regroup for a counterattack. But the humans had the advantage now. They had learned the Zelari's strategies, anticipated their movements, and transformed the battlefield into a deadly trap. Sergeant Kellen Myra walked among her troops, her gaze steady. Soldiers checked their weapons, reinforced barricades, and confirmed positions. Medics and engineers moved quietly through the streets, making sure that every wounded could return to action and that every trap would function as intended. Civilians were moved to safe zones, watched carefully by soldiers who understood that hope and survival were inseparable. "We know what they'll do," Kellen said to her squad leaders. "They'll try to hit us hard and they'll try to scare us. But we're ready. Every street, every building, every ruined alley is part of our plan. Today we take the fight to them and end this." Her words carried through the city, not as a shout of fearlessness, but as a promise of determination. Every soldier felt it, a bond of purpose that made them stronger, smarter, and faster than the enemy could anticipate. They were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting to prove that humanity could dominate even the most terrifying adversary. The first movement came just as the sun rose, casting long shadows over the city. A wave of Zelari command units emerged from the northern wastes, towering machines bristling with weapons, supported by thousands of smaller drones. Their approach was methodical, as always, but humans had prepared for this. Engineers detonated charges along key streets, funneling the enemy into narrow corridors where ambushes waited. Snipers struck from rooftops, and infantry squads moved like shadows, striking at weak points in the alien formations. Kellen led her squad through one of the streets carefully. Explosions rocked nearby buildings, sending dust and debris into the morning air, but she did not falter. Every action had been anticipated, every path carefully planned. The humans had turned the entire city into a weapon. The Zelari, for all their strength, were now navigating a maze of fire, rubble, and calculated human resistance. The first armored Zelari unit stumbled into a trap, collapsing under precise explosives placed beneath the street. Smaller drones swarmed the area, only to find themselves cut off by barricades and concentrated rifle fire. The humans moved with a combination of precision and improvisation, exploiting every weakness in the alien formations. Where the Zelari expected fear, they found strategy and courage. Where they expected confusion, they encountered coordination and ingenuity. Corporal Isaac Wren reported from the eastern sector. "Sir, their central command units are being isolated." "We're cutting off their lines of communication." Kellen nodded. "Good, keep pressure on. Don't let them regroup. We force them to fight piecemeal, and we finish them one group at a time." The battle became a symphony of chaos and human cunning. Infantry squads pushed forward through the ruins. Engineers set controlled demolitions to collapse key pathways, and snipers moved silently to eliminate Zelari officers. The smaller drones were destroyed in ambush after ambush, and even the largest command units struggled to advance. Humans were everywhere, appearing where the aliens least expected, disappearing just as quickly and leaving devastation in their wake. Civilians watched from safe zones as the humans pushed the Zelari further back. It was not a battle of raw strength alone, but a demonstration of how humans used every advantage available. They adapted to enemy tactics instantly, coordinated attacks across multiple sectors, and turned environmental hazards into weapons. Every victory boosted morale, not just for the soldiers, but for the people they protected. Hope was no longer fragile, it was tangible, and it fueled every action. By mid-afternoon, the Zelari forces had been forced into the industrial northern district. The humans had anticipated this retreat and set the final stage of their plan. Entire streets were rigged with explosives, snipers were positioned to cover every escape route, and squads were ready to strike from above and below. The aliens moved cautiously, but the humans were unpredictable. Every step the Zelari took brought them closer to traps, ambushes, and concentrated fire. Kellen took a moment to glance over the battlefield. Smoke and fire created an almost surreal landscape, but in the chaos, humans moved like a single organism. Every squad knew its role, but every individual had the freedom to improvise, to act on instinct, and to exploit any weakness. The Zelari, for all their numbers and strength, were encountering a level of adaptability they could not calculate. "Here they come," whispered a soldier. The first wave of Zelari command units entered the trap. Explosives detonated along the streets, collapsing buildings and creating barriers. Human squads emerged from hidden positions, firing from rooftops, behind barricades, and from alleyways. Grenades and improvised explosives disrupted their formations, and even the heaviest units struggled to maintain momentum. The battle raged for hours. Humans and Zelari clashed in the ruined streets, the sounds of gunfire, explosions, and alien screeches filling the air. Humans did not panic, they adapted. When one attack failed, they changed tactics instantly. When one route became blocked, they found another. They were not just soldiers, they were improvisers, thinkers, and fighters all at once. Kellen moved with her squad, coordinating attacks, directing fire, and inspiring her soldiers. She could see the Zelari beginning to falter, their units breaking under pressure. Command drones attempted to regroup, but human snipers and engineers struck at key points, isolating sections of the enemy force. Each step the Zelari took was now predictable to the humans, but each human move remained unpredictable to the aliens. By evening, the battalion had pushed the remaining Zelari forces into a confined industrial complex. The humans had turned the entire city into a controlled battlefield, forcing the enemy into a trap they could not escape. Engineers rigged the final charges, snipers took their positions, and infantry prepared for the closing strike. Every soldier knew that victory was within reach. Kellen took a deep breath. "This is it," she said to her squad. "We finish them, no mercy, no hesitation. Today, we prove once and for all why humans are unstoppable." The final assault began with a coordinated explosion that collapsed the main entry points of the industrial complex. Human squads poured in from multiple angles, cutting off the Zelari units from one another. Snipers picked off key targets, while engineers deployed devices to disrupt alien sensors. Infantry engaged in close combat with smaller units, their speed, tactics, and coordination overwhelming the enemy. Even the largest command units struggled to move through the maze of traps and fire. They were forced to retreat into smaller formations, only to be met with concentrated human firepower. The aliens had never faced such adaptability, and their morale broke. One by one, their forces fell, retreating deeper into the complex only to meet more ambushes and traps. Kellen and her squad advanced through the final corridors, clearing rooms and eliminating any remaining resistance. Explosions shook the structure, smoke filled the air, and the Zelari shrieked in confusion and fear. The humans pressed forward relentlessly, never allowing the enemy a moment to recover. Every soldier knew that the battle's outcome was now certain. The Zelari would not leave the Krasar system victorious. By nightfall, the last Zelari units were destroyed or captured. The city was battered, streets littered with rubble and smoke, but victory belonged to humanity. Civilians cautiously emerged from safe zones, witnessing the soldiers who had not only defended them, but had turned the tide of the battle entirely. The humans had arrived as reinforcements, but they had become the decisive force that saved the colony and shattered the enemy's plans. Kellen stood atop a ruined building, her squad gathered around her. Fires burned across the city, casting flickering shadows over the battlefield. She looked down at the streets at the remnants of the alien forces and felt a rare sense of satisfaction. "They asked for reinforcements," she said quietly. "They got more than that. They got an entire human battalion, and today we proved what humanity can do." Her soldiers nodded, exhausted but proud. They had survived, adapted, and triumphed. They had turned despair into victory, fear into determination, and chaos into a weapon. Every step of their battle had been a testament to human ingenuity, courage, and spirit. The civilians approached cautiously, some holding children, others just watching in awe. They had seen humanity's strength firsthand, not the strength of weapons alone, but the strength of will, creativity, and unity. Humans had defended their homes, reclaimed their streets, and driven back an enemy who had assumed they would fail. The battalion had become a symbol, a reminder that humans were never to be underestimated. As the night settled over the Krasar system, Kellen and her squad made their way through the city. Engineers continued to secure buildings, medics treated the wounded, and infantry patrolled the streets, ensuring no enemy could regroup. The city, though scarred, had been saved, and humanity's presence was undeniable. Kellen allowed herself a moment to reflect. The Zelari had believed that their superior technology and numbers could crush humanity. They had underestimated humans' creativity, courage, and adaptability. They had failed to understand that humans fought not only with weapons, but with their minds, their hearts, and their will to survive. Today, humanity had not only won a battle, they had sent a clear message across the stars. The stars above the Krasar system shone brightly, indifferent to the struggle below. But the humans below had carved their presence into history. They had arrived, fought, and triumphed against impossible odds. And the galaxy, for all its countless civilizations and endless conflicts, would remember the lesson the Zelari had learned. Humans could not be defeated when united, determined, and willing to fight with every ounce of their being. Kellen looked toward the horizon, toward the faint glow of other colonies and the empty expanse beyond. She whispered to herself, "We are humanity. We survive, we adapt, we fight, and we will never be stopped." The battalion moved through the city one last time, securing what remained and ensuring that every civilian was safe. Fires were extinguished where possible, rubble cleared from critical paths, and the city was stabilized. The humans had arrived as reinforcements, but they had left as legends, an entire battalion that had not only defended a world but had reshaped the course of a battle that could have ended in disaster. The Zelari were defeated, their forces shattered, and the Krasar system safe. Humanity had shown its true strength, not through brute force alone, but through ingenuity, courage, and an unbreakable spirit. And as night gave way to dawn, the human battalion stood victorious, ready for whatever the universe would challenge them with next.